deficit that has potentially would affect the town for the total amount of up to $350,000. Now, there's been no decision as to what impact that would have on the school department, but if we look at the traditional split between school and town, I'm looking at somewhere in the vicinity of a $200,000 reduction. And then it also is important to be reminded that we came out of town meeting and we did not receive funding for all of the small capital items that we had in our budget. And that was not carried forward into October. And the expectation is that we would also take that in our budget as well.
And that was $50,000.
$50,000, right, which is above and beyond what I'm talking about here. So I'd like to go over this, and I wanted to review this with the school committee publicly, and then I'm going to be sending all of the staff members tomorrow a detailed letter of the reductions. So this was a communication that I had with the administrative staff last week. So number one, we're on a budget freeze, and that means that we are making every effort not to move forward in any discretionary expenditures. Now, I have to remind the committee that when you think about this on the expense side, that since the largest percentage of our budget represents staffing, when you look at expenses and what that means to the individual schools, it's not a large amount. I don't know whether you can quote that amount or
what the impact of all of these together?
well, just the expense side of the budget.
I think it's about 17%, isn't it, the non-salary?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes,
And
it's
then- and then
83 salary, 17 expense.
But then if you add into that the, say, out-of-town tuition costs, that's another X percent. You're probably up around 85, 86%. So you're really talking about 14% of the budget or less that we can.
Oh, much less, because
that we
of that
can cut.
17%, that's utilities
Right,
and special
exactly.
education, so
Probably even below 10% of what we.
it is below 10%,
Yeah.
well below 10%.
So what we're doing is any purchase orders that have not been moved forward on will be denied, and or will be reviewed by Carl and or by me. And so we're basically asking the question on every one of these: can we do without this item? Can we do without this activity? Can we do without this service? And I'll give you one example. For the last number of years, we have been testing students in the 9th grade on Terra Nova. It's a standardized test. We use the results of that test as a way on numerous uses, but a primary one is to prepare students for PSATs and SATs. It helps with class placement. It helps with diagnosing where students are. We've canceled that. That will not be done in the 9th grade this year, and that has a cost of $6,500. And so again, that shows you the level. So this is not just paper and crayons. This is looking at anything that we have answered the question: can we do without this item, this activity, or this service this year? Now, clearly, there are negatives on every one of these decisions, and these are the kinds of decisions that I'm asking the principals to make. We're also saying and asking, can you pay for the expense through an outside fund? Unless you can pay for this expense through an outside funds or grants, then we're not going to do it. And again, to take a budget where historically North Reading per pupil expenditure ranks rock bottom or very close in the pit when compared to all other school districts across the state. Again, I know there's continued discussion about that by a number of committees and individuals in this community. I would challenge any one of those individuals. I'd like to meet directly with them to say that they don't understand school financing. So we're freezing this budget, and we're freezing a budget that is a very lean budget to begin with. but we understand this needs to be done given the tough financial position of the town. Professional development. We've canceled virtually all professional development as it relates to anything that cannot be funded through a grant. So for example, we're part of a grant, the Teaching of American History. This is the third year of the grant. Many of our teachers have worked very diligently on that. A number of programs, teachers will be allowed to go to those programs because not only is the cost of the program covered by the grant, but substitute costs are covered by the grant. Basically, Carl and I will be looking at every item, and no means no. So you're likely to hear more and more of this as it begins to roll out. And we expect this freeze not to be lifted for the entire school year. Second item is energy savings. I think we do a very good job through the business office through Wayne Hardiker. But in this day and age where energy consumption, we had our eco team talking tonight, we really need to live up to all of the talk about energy savings. I've said this before, I'll say it again, we all need to do our part, and we're not going to be turning off the heat, but we're going to be really watching it to the point where it may, you may get more complaints about the conditions in the school. And I would urge all parents to work with us on this and make sure that your children are dressed appropriately for the weather. A lot of work has been done over the last couple of years with Reading Municipal Light in terms of our energy audits. I know the new Batchelder School has automatic shutoffs on lights. Some of the other schools do not. So as we come out of rooms, if they're not being used, then we're saying turn the lights off. We had several memos coming out today from Pam Bodwin, our Curriculum and Technology Director. Interestingly, we have set all of our computer labs, even though these are in 5 different schools, we can control power access to those terminals and monitors, and they're actually shut off at 6 o'clock. But the other school, classroom-based computers are not on that network, and so we have to be vigilant to make sure that they're being shut off as well. In terms of heating, I'm asking that, it's typical, it's dismissal. You see, even when the weather's good, you'll see the doors open in the main lobby because, lots of, 700 kids are leaving.
Yeah.
And so sometimes those doors remain open. We're saying keep them closed. We're also saying that the individual classrooms, the thermostats there and the univents are designed to work for the conditions in that classroom. So if the classroom door is open, then it's getting the ambient hallway air in there, and that's going to affect the climate within that classroom. So again, it's part of that vigilant effort to be on top of this. We have a lot of microwaves and individual heaters, refrigerators, and other appliances. We're saying remove them from classrooms.
So no space heaters?
Well, that's not allowed,
Yeah.
which they should not be there. Okay.
So it's not fair, kids don't get to have one. Yes.
And we're asking our students to be little eco teams in all of their classes. Again, I think we have to not just play our part in terms of finances, but this is really the responsible thing to do.
It may not be for 1 year.
Right.
We'll see all this right in the new budget.
Photocopiers and paper use. So you actually got part of that today.
Yeah.
And we're thinking of finding a new way, perhaps, even if the school committee can receive information, we can email it to you rather than doing a paper transmittal. But our schools are equipped with these risograph machines that are high copy and do it in a much cost-efficient manner. So I've set a goal, 1/3 reduction. of the use of paper in our schools. And we're going to try to chart that out over the coming months and weeks, and be able to report back to the schools in terms of how things are doing. Consumables, there's a freeze on the purchase of consumables such as classroom materials, ink cartridges, office supplies, fundamentals. So we heard tonight from the high school parent association that has funded, as I think most of the parent associations have funded, wish lists. We may be turning to parent associations to find a way to fund some very basic items. And I know Mrs. Davis, who has young children in school, typically knows that, particularly in the younger school, these lists of consumable items come home on a regular basis. We need classroom supplies, from paper to paper towels to Kleenex, to other items that are needed as part of the everyday function of a class. But we're not going to be able to purchase them. So we can expect to place a higher demand on fundraising. Item number 5, substitutes in the classroom coverage. We are going to turn to our paraprofessionals to serve in the role of substitutes because we feel that it can be accomplished if it's on a very short-term basis. By short-term, I mean a day or two. But if we're into a longer leave, then we're asking the question, is that leave, should that leave be replaced? I don't see item number 5 as being for the long-term leaves. And for example, I know that we had a recent resignation in physical education at the Hood School. And at this point, I would defer that to what I would call tier 2, would be not replacing those kinds of leaves, because to do that would definitely require a rethinking on how physical education or anything is done. It would mean shifting classes or going from twice a week to once a week, and then there's the question of what do you do with students, and you're back to the the early Wednesday release. I hope we're not there. I'm not saying that we're there at this point. We'll make that decision, I think, after the election day. Certainly, if ballot question 1 passes, I think there's great concern that the deficit of $350,000 would pale in comparison to the kinds of cutbacks that we would need.
But certainly looking at next year's budget, how we deliver
Absolutely.
gym to elementary
Right.
school. Okay.
Absolutely. So absences and then vacancies and hires, both of those are covered under number 5 and 6. And then finally, in terms of custodial services, we're looking at perhaps another way to, again, partly deal with if you think about custodians with vacation times, this is a 12-month position. All of those vacations don't occur during the summertime. In fact, oftentimes the summertime is our busiest time of year. Vacations would occur at other times. So we're looking at other ways to be sure that our lunchroom, lunch coverage is covered, but it may periodically lead to our reduced coverage in the evening, which would mean that fundamental cleaning overnight would not be taking place on a daily basis. And I worry about that because that leads to, if this happens over a long period of time, it leads to a deterioration of the quality of our school facilities. And I'm very proud and pleased of the condition of our building, and I attribute that directly to the diligent work of our custodial staff. We may be into a position where if we're shifting, having floaters move and shifting the shifts, that we may not be able to have buildings open as frequently as we would like, and this will have a consequence for evening programs, youth sports, and so forth, that may pass on a higher cost to recreation and youth sports, because that's where the overtime would
So
come.
that's what the option there would be, that the groups renting the facilities would have to pay for that coverage. Correct.
Higher than what they're paying now.
which I think, again, you know, as an option.